friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop. Hawaii time, anybody? Well, that's where we're headed. We're going to Hawaii. We've got ukuleles have surged in popularity over the last decade, I'd say. It's actually been going on for quite a while, the popularity of ukuleles. And we've got one here that's kind of in a world of hurt. I don't want to sound snobbish at all, but to me these are almost like toys compared to the instruments that I typically see, the ones that I build, etc. But on the other side of the coin, they make some really good music with these things these days, and it brings to mind the pair of girls that I saw. Now, I don't want anybody to think I'm racist or anything. I don't know how else to describe them. They appear to be Polynesian girls. They are incredible musicians on these ukuleles. They take turns playing, and man, they're playing fast, and they're awesome. So I like to listen to those girls on YouTube play. I don't know their names, or I'd point you to them. But I'm sure if you search out there, you'll see the two girls I'm talking about, and you can't mistake them because they're killer. But anyway, this one happens to be a Gretch ukulele. Therefore, it's quality, right? It's a Gretch. So I don't see any particular labels or any numbers in it, so I don't have any additional information other than that. It's got a major break here in the back. The neck is pulling loose. If it'll focus on that, but the neck is pulling loose right there. Don't know if you can see that even. It don't seem to be showing up much in the camera, but it'll probably show up on the video. Just for the record, I looked this up on Google and to see, a little bit about it, to try to learn a little bit about it. This appears to be about a 1950s, 1960s perhaps, Gretch ukulele. I would have guessed it about that old just by looking at it also, so I think that matches. I found only one online that looked identical to this, that had this shape end here. The new modern ones, Gretch still apparently makes them. Sweetwater sells one for $99. But it's a different fretboard. It comes all the way down to the sound hole. It looks pretty much like this. It's a 9100, I think they call it. This one doesn't appear to have a model number, and the one online didn't have any indication of the model number either. Looking at the old tuners, these are just friction type peg tuners. I didn't really notice what the new modern ones have. They probably have geared tuners, I would think. But anyway, we got some issues here with this thing. I don't want to spend a lot of money because even the old one that looked just like this, they were only asking $250 for it. So we can't afford to go spending $1,000 to repair this thing. I was trying to get a hint as to how this neck is put on there. I can see through the neck joint almost halfway up, about this far. From this end to about so far up, I can see through it. So that indicates to me it's not a dovetail as such, or at least it's not a standard dovetail. It may be put in with dowels, and the sad thing of that is if they put it with dowels, the main dowel should have been here toward the end, so, to counteract that going that way. But there's nothing on the end all the way through. And the other thing is that's sad is you can't push it back together. I've tried pushing it back together, and it feels totally solid. It doesn't want to go. The neck angle, I'm exaggerating, but the neck angle to the body is like this when it should be like this, or at least flat. So it does need a neck reset. This here has been repaired by somebody else. It's glued through here and it's not level. It's loose on the ends, and there's a tiny place loose about here. We're getting into time on this thing, and I don't want to spend a lot of time and effort on it. I'm going to contact the customer to see what he thinks about this. I talked to the customer, and he's willing to spend up to a couple of $100, $250, he said, to have it repaired. I'm willing to donate a little time on it myself because I haven't done a ukulele and the fact that it's a Gretch ukulele, just, I don't know, there's just something about the Gretch name, seems like it's kind of cool, and it's from the 1950s, which is kind of cool. It is solid mahogany. It's not a, you know, any kind of a laminate or anything. So it's, you know, it's a nice little instrument, reasonably well made, very tiny. It's a very small one. I don't know ukulele terms, but if I was guessing, I'd probably call this like a tenor luke or soprano luke or something like that, you know, because it's very small. I don't know the terms, and I don't need to know the terms. It's not necessary in this case. All I need to know is how am I going to get this apart to fix it. Looking at this fretboard is wafer thin. I think I might be able to pull this fret. The fret is cut all the way through the fretboard already. I can tell you for sure. If I tried to take this fretboard off, it's going to come off in pieces. Every one of those is going to be a separate fretboard, I guarantee you, because it's cut all the way through. So what I'm going to try to do is focus on this one little piece right here, get this piece off, see what that neck joint looks like. That may not even help me. There may not be any kind of a dovetail here. I don't think there is a dovetail. I actually think maybe there's dowels. But either way, I've got to get this loose from the body. And when I take this loose from the body, it's going to come apart anyway. So I might as well just focus on getting rid of this piece right here, or taking it off. I'm going to try to take it off in one piece and save it. But if it breaks or whatever, it wouldn't be very hard to remake that piece. That's our goal. That's where we're headed. I told the customer that. Same way with this back thing here. I'm not sure how I'm going to fix that. If it was glued flat, you know, but it's not. You know, you can catch your fingernail on it. It's definitely not glued flat. So we'll see what we can do about fixing it. I'm using my water technique here to get in there, you know, a good damp rag, and you just rub it back and forth across that fret, and it just gets water under there. It really works well. It's the best way to do it. I've tried brushes and everything else. That actually gets the water in there better than a brush. So I think we got it soaked well enough. I think we can probably pull this fret now without too much damage. We got it out and no damage at all. That's a good thing. I'm going to go ahead and just keep soaking this end right here. And then I'm going to put an iron on this and heat it up. And the way I'm going to do that is a little different. I'm going to take this piece of aluminum, because this is so thin that if I put the iron directly on here, I'll be heating this top. So I'm going to put this little piece of aluminum right on top of that part that I want to get hot. And I'm going to put the iron on that and see if we can heat it up without doing any damage to the rest of this thing. This is a tough little situation. Whoa, it's going under there fairly easy now. Wow, that lifted up pretty darn good. Very good. Well, as I suspected, there's no joint there, but that loosened it up. I think we're going to be able to get it apart now. Look at that. It's already wiggling loose. It's coming, but it's very slow. Look at there, just one dowel. Not a good way to put a neck on, I can tell you for sure. I don't like how this neck joint is designed, and therefore I'm going to put in 3 more dowels. Believe it or not. And they only had 1, and now this neck is going to end up with 4. Now, lining that is going to be very hard to do, lining it up. I have got a block on my table here that is relatively square. I've got the back squared up to that, and that's just to have some way of kind of keeping this thing vertical. It's not perfectly square anyway, but it's the best I've got to work with. I might also say I've got my depth stop set so that this will only drill a certain depth into this neck, because this neck block is not very thick. I would say it's less than an inch thick. so I'm only going to go in about a 1/2 inch or something like that. So I'm going to drill in 3 more holes for my dowels. I have a 5/16 inch drill bit in here, and I've got a 5/16 inch dowel to fill in. And I'm just more or less selecting the spots by eye. And that's what she looks like with the holes. Now I'll have to put some dowel locators in these holes and put the neck on and see if we can mark where to drill the holes in the neck. Ron is in the other room working. I've got these dowel locations, these little centers in there. This one here is, wouldn't you know, one of them's just a hair thinner on the shim that goes around there than the other ones. So you can't win for losing sometimes. I'm going to put a single edge razor blade under there to take up that space. That's going to make it pretty close. And then I'm going to center this on here. I really don't have much to go on other than the old lines that are there that I'm looking at. And I'm putting it back on those old lines. I'm going to look at the neck level like this way. Looks pretty good. Just don't have much to go on. And then I'm just going to wiggle it like this by hand and try to mark those points. It'd be nice if I could tap it, but I really can't tap it. I'm just pushing on it. And I'm hoping that marked it. It did. Marked it pretty well, actually. So now if we can find a precision way to drill those holes, that would make it really handy. Emphasis on precision. I've got the neck clamped to a block. I have the block tilted back just a little bit to get this flat and square. I put a level on here to make sure that it's flat and square. I have a brad point bit. In fact, it's a brand new brad point bit, and I'm going to center that point over these little holes. And I have a depth stop, so it'll only drill so deep. And the rest of it's pure luck. So here we go. Well, on paper, that worked great. I hope it worked as well when I put the dowels in it, because it worked great here. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. You never know. Trying to line up 4 holes is not an easy thing to do. I will say that Ron is in the other room working. You probably hear machines running. I can hear one now. And he's in there making a couple of custom nuts for a fellow who is in the States. I believe the fellow's from the UK, and while he's here, he wanted to get a couple of antler nuts made for his instruments. He sent us specifications, and we're making those, or Ron is, I should say, to his specifications, while I'm fixing a ukulele neck. Well, we got those holes drilled. Hopefully that footage turned out okay. It's not easy, folks, to line up 4 holes and get them all to match. I know that going in. You know, I'm no dummy on this kind of thing. In fact, it's next to impossible to do. The odds of this actually working are fairly slim. I know that going in, but I'm still going to give it a shot. Made these a certain depth, and I'm going to see how deep I made them. And I'm going to mark that on here. And there's 3. Now I'm going to taper the very ends of each of these dowels just a little bit so that there's nothing on the way in that's going to cause a problem. And I'm also going to put a groove down each dowel, and I'll just cut that with an X-Acto knife right here, right now. You can see what I'm doing. I'll zoom in on this. I just take and cut a line down the length of the dowel like that. Cut it a couple of times so that it's fairly deep. Then I cut at a slight angle to that and make a little channel. So I make a little channel down through there right like that, and that channel lets the glue escape and the air escape. If you don't have that channel, you will have a problem. It would be better with 2 or 3 channels, but 1 channel is better than none, I can tell you. Okay, I have a channel cut in each dowel, and I have the ends beveled slightly on every dowel. Now I'm going to just dry fit it up first because it's just wise to do that. The odds of this actually going together, I just think are slim to zero, pretty honest. I'm probably going to have to shave the edges off of a dowel or enlarge a hole or something. But I'm going to give it a shot. You never know. You might get lucky. And I think I got real lucky. It's amazing. It worked. It worked perfectly. You couldn't hardly do it any better. And the neck angle is not great, though, I got to tell you. Neck angle is, well, actually, it's passable. It's almost perfectly flat now, where it was, it's pretty close to perfectly flat now. Because it was definitely at an angle like this. And now it's just about perfectly flat with this. And that'll probably be just fine. I may have to shave it just a hair. I think it's going to be just fine. I think I say it's perfectly flat. I believe there's just a hair down to it also, so which is good. Let's just take the straight edge here. Yeah, got to have one the right length for this. Just have to use this as my straight edge. That's pretty good. It could go just a hair more, maybe. It's just almost right. See if we can get it back out of here. I think what I'm going to do is just barely take any off this bottom edge, and I'm going to do that with my sander. My disc sander. I'm going to lay this flat, and I'm going to just touch this end on the disc sander and knock it down just ever so slightly. I'm talking like a 32nd of an inch. It won't take much at all. I have a little piece of wood under this end of the neck, and I'm just going by eye, guys. I don't have any way to really measure this, and that's going to knock just the tip of this off just ever so slightly, and I'm not going to do very much at all. I think you can see what I knocked off there, and I'm just going to clean that little bit up by hand, and I think we're good. Well, I think that did it just perfectly, because now the straight edge goes just over the edge. It's still just a hair below the saddle, which is fine, I think, in this case, on such a short neck like this. So now the dowels appear to be just a fraction of a hair too long. Wouldn't you know? Just that little bit of difference. So I'll file all the dowels off, or just plane them off. Cut them off something, just a little bit. It's just a hair long. And I mean like only a hair, guys. And now for the star of our show, Titebond Original. Somebody should show this video to the Franklin International Company for me so that they become my sponsor, because you all know that I brag on Titebond Original all the time. I guarantee you that this will hold this joint tighter than a bull's butt at fly time.
I was driving down a lonely road on a dark and stormy night, when a little girl by the roadside showed up in my headlight.
I think we got her. Get some water and clean that up, and I think we just about got her whipped. I've cleaned the joint with some water, and I'm just checking it, and it still looks pretty darn perfect on the height. I'm real happy with that. I'm going to see if there's some way I can get it to clamp down. There's nothing to clamp to. This is like a 45. You can't put a clamp directly on that. Boy, it's not hardly clampable other than to press one end to the other end, and I don't think that's a good method. I'm afraid I'd crack something, break something. It's squished together pretty darn well. I kind of think we may just have to just ride it out and see what happens. Well, I'll tell you, I've tried every way I can think of to clamp this, and I can't come up with a good method. I put a bar clamp on from end to end, underneath it. I've clamped down this way. I've tried everything I can think of. Nothing works. Everything has a problem. They have helped me get it tighter, but it hasn't, you know, always been in the right position. It's off by a little bit. So you got a bunch of angles you're working with. You're working with the angle this way. It has to be just right. And you're working with the angle down this way so that it hits the bridge at the right place. And then you're also got an angle this way for twist. So the twist is pretty much taken out because of the dowels, but the up and down and the sideways still happens. So I've got it pressed together by hand the best I can do. And that's just going to have to do. And by lining it up and everything, it looks like it's going to be fine. We're just going to have to let it set real still and do its thing. It's been several hours. The neck is pretty much dry. I'm just working on the joint here, or I guess you'd just say the union where the neck and the top meet. Now there's a little bit of a hump there because we've got the neck at the proper angle. And so I'm just trying to clean that up where the little piece of fretboard I took off will span that without rocking and being in a big hump. I'm just kind of knocking that hump down in the middle. And I think that's going to be good enough. It doesn't take too much.
I stopped, she crawled in the back, and in a shaky tone she said, "My name is Mary, please won't you take me home?" She must have been so frightened.
This fret keeps wanting to raise up on this end, so I'm going to just try this and see if this will hold it. I'm pushing down on it with this piece of wood, and then I'm clamping that piece of wood to the other clamp, and I think that's going to work. Yeah, I think that's going to work fine. So we'll let that set up for an hour or so, and we'll move on from there. This crack is been re-glued with something. It's kind of a gummy type glue. I don't know what they used. It's not what I would have used, obviously. But I'm trying to see if I can get it apart. Up here, it's almost good enough right here, but from here on down, it's pretty bad. So, the very tippy tip of this is broken off. It leaves a fairly square flat end, and I've sharpened that a little bit more on my whetstone, and I'm getting in there just using the back of that blade kind of as a scraper to get rid of all that glue, trying not to cut the wood as much as I can, but you know, we're talking a very minute crack here, so it's very difficult to know exactly what you're cutting and what you're scraping. But I'm doing the best I can. My goal is to get it apart, get it level, get it glued, and then if there's any holes left, we'll just fill them and stain them.
There in the night, there was something strange about her. Her face was deadly white. She sat there pale and white in the back seat all alone.
Tell you what I may have to do. I may have to just glue a little bit of this at a time using CA glue to make it flush with my fingers inside. Now that's going to glue my fingers inside there, you know. So I'm going to put on some gloves, rubber gloves, and when it glues my glove in there, at least I'll be able to get my hand out. But that's the only way I'm going to get that flat. There is no way that it's going to go flat any other way, but it does look like it's going to go perfectly flat if I do it this way.
I never will forget that night I took Mary.
Just barely have any of this accelerator left, but it might be just enough to make that work. And it seemed like it did. I don't want to let it move until I know that that's solid. Very good, and it's pretty flat. I won't say it's perfect, but it's pretty darn flat. I think I'm going to switch now and go to this end and get this end perfectly flat, and then I'll work on the middle here.
Pulled into the driveway where she told me to go. I got out to help her from the car, then I opened up the door.
Now our biggest issue is we've got this line of glue down through there. You got to get it cleaned off. One of the best ways to do that's with a single edge razor blade and taping off the blade. I'll give that a shot and see how well that's going to work in this case. You can probably see on the razor blade I've taped off the ends. So I left the middle exposed, and that tape is just thick enough it's to hold it up off the instrument and just let me scrape just the glue line. And at least that's the theory and the plan.
But I just could not believe my eyes, for the back seat was bare. I looked all around the car, but Mary wasn't there. A light shone from the front porch, someone opened up the door. And I asked about the little girl that I was searching.
Well, there you go. It's not perfect, but by gosh, it's a lot better than it was. Without spending a lot of time and money. Now we got to clean up this area here. The iron touched it a little bit there. Got a little bit of scuffing going on. I'm going to just try to clean this up a little bit right in here, and then I think we're done.
The lady gently smiled as she brushed a tear away. She said it sure was nice of you to go out of your way.
And now I'm going to touch that up with a little bit of dye. You can see the white there. Touch that up with just a little bit of dye, and we'll let her set overnight and string her up tomorrow.
But 13 years ago tonight in a wreck just down the road.
Well, there you go. You can't even hardly tell it now. And the back, little bit dull where we had to clean it up there, but all things said and done, that's pretty good. It really is. It's not too bad. Try a little bit of wax on there. See if that'll shine that area up a little bit. I don't think it will. I think it's still going to show differently. Pretty nice. Pretty nice. Well, friends, we got this little puppy strung up, and I think it's fine, except for the fact that I do think I have the neck angle just a hair down too much for this bridge. You live and you learn. I hadn't done one of these before, and I think I've got it just a fraction of a hair too far down. It sort of plays most of the strings, but on the bass strings, get a little buzzing going on. It's just the action's just a hair too low. That's the bottom line. And I think the nut action here is fine, so I don't see a problem there. There is a problem back here, though, that I didn't really notice. You can see that the bridge is kind of pulled up in these areas here. The bridge has been re-glued. It's real obvious. I don't think it's actually loose. It's just that they didn't get it down tight when they glued it, is what I think happened here. A couple options. I was hoping we were done because we really don't want to spend a lot more money on this. I could just raise up this saddle a little bit, maybe put a little deer antler cap on top of it, which is about what I'm thinking I should do, and just leave this back here like it is. I don't think it's going to come loose any further. I think they glued it pretty well. They just didn't get it down all the way when they glued it. I don't see any looseness there. I don't see any sign that it's pulling up more. I'm tempted to just take the strings back off of it, level the frets real good, because I didn't level them, and that might have an effect too. So I could level the frets a little bit, and then just raise this a little bit higher on the bass side down to almost nothing on the treble side. We'll raise it maybe 20 thousandths on the treble side and maybe 30 thousandths on the bass side, something like that. That's not very much. It sounds like a lot, but it's not. And I think it'll be fine then. But and I think it'll look okay with a little white cap right on top of that, and it'll probably even improve the sound. The deer antler is good for the sound. So I really kind of think that's the only option I got here under the circumstances. Because there's no way I'm going to take that neck back apart. And I did the best I could on leveling it. I mean, you can see there is just a teeny bit of angle to it now. Not much. It's, when you look down it like this, you can just see this disappear, which is what I do on guitars. But this is such a short, wheelbase, if you will. If you were talking about a car, it's such a short base here that it makes a bigger difference, I guess. So I don't have any real options here. I'm just going to level the frets and we're going to raise this up, and we're going to call it good. I concentrated on the back end of this and tried to go from lower it to higher just to help it out a little bit. As I started to recrown these, I'm realizing that this fret, and I think it was this fret, parts of other frets just aren't even getting touched. This one never got touched at all. This one I don't think did either. I've already started cleaning it up though, rounding it off, but like that one's not even touched. So I'm going to take down the frets a little bit more.
Our darling Mary lost her life and we miss her so. Thank you for your trouble and the kindness you have shown. You're the 13th one that's been here bringing Mary home.
One of the other reasons that this was too low is because the settle has little notches in them, and I don't think anybody actually filed those in there. I think this being it's a hardwood, but over time it's just wore down, and they're wore down 10 thousandths of an inch or so. If those were up another 10 thousandths, that would make a lot of difference here too. But so in order for me to put a deer antler cap on this, I think what I'm going to do is just take and flatten that off as flat as I can get it. I'm just going to try to keep the file flat and level, and just level until I don't see those grooves anymore. I'd call that just about perfectly straight. It's a hair lower on this side than this side anyway. So we're going to have to build this side up a little bit more anyway. I'm just going to make a piece and see how it goes. I've got a piece of antler that is just perfect to fit on top of here. And perfect length, perfect width. I also beveled the back of it. The thickest place is about 70 thousandths, and that should raise it about 35 thousandths out here. And I think that's going to be enough to give us where we need to be. And if it's a little bit too much, we can always take it down. But I think we're in pretty good shape there. So we're going to glue her on there. There you go, that's what it looks like. And I think it's going to be fine. I've already put a bevel on it. We got her tuned up there. She plays really nice. I mean, the action's very, very good. I can't play a lick on this thing, so I'm not even going to try. I went ahead and filled the little gap underneath here because I really seriously do not think it's loose. It's just that they didn't get it clamped down well when they glued it. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to leave it here in the shop tuned up for a day or two. And if I see that moving, we'll address it. But I don't think that's going to move. I don't think that's a problem at all. I'm going to dye that brown to match the little dye that I put in on the neck there where you really just can't even tell it. And that'll make that look finished too. Overall, I think it turned out wonderful. I think it's a very nice little ukulele. It ought to give somebody hours and hours of pleasure. Thank you for watching.